Hey guys, welcome. Okay, so in my keeping with light content for December, I hope you guys are grooving with this because I just, I feel like December's already just such a clusterfuck. Like, do we have to be fixing our parenting too? Like, everybody's just trying to stay afloat. So, one of the things I want to talk about is some things I've learned from Maverick. And again, this is kind of like going into the new year, some thoughts, nothing deep, nothing crazy. But first of all, I'm pretty stoked. So like as the weather changed and the seasons changed, I usually get really sick. You guys, if you've listened for me for a long time, I almost always get laryngitis once a year. And of course, the winter's not really over. And I do have like this kind of dry cough that comes up when I start talking on the podcast because I don't necessarily talk all day to anybody but you guys. Mm. But I've had 4 distinct times where I have felt like I was going under, like with sickness. And, you wake up with a sore throat, the kind of runny nose and all that. And it just kind of flew through me like within a day. So I don't know. I feel good about that. I feel like maybe I've done something healthier this year. I'm not sure what, but definitely I've been really, really, really watching my stress. The more you learn about stress, the more you realize, like, holy shit, this is really the killer. And obviously, you guys are under a lot more stress than me. But I think as you edge towards menopause, I think that's something to really keep in mind. I think it's lowering our cortisol and lowering our stress in general is like so super important. And I'll say more about that in the next little bite-sized nugget. But today I really want to talk about Maverick. So, a couple of things that have come to my attention about, my relationship, I guess, with Maverick. All right, my shitty training. I'll just say it out loud. I am the worst, okay? When he was a puppy, we hired a dog trainer because the first dog like I had as an adult was Stella when he was in kindergarten when we got Stella. And I got an older dog because I wasn't like a crazy dog person. I was a crazy kid person. Like I got to stop every stroller and say hi to the baby, right? But the dogs, I was like, they're cute. I had nothing against them. It's not like I didn't like them. I just wasn't a dog person. And like the slobbering, I could have done without. So when I had Stella, I got Stella and she had really bad habits. And it turns out she was highly reactive. And it wasn't until Stella, I went away and my mom was still in pretty good shape. And my mom would take Stella around the block. She was so reactive, she actually went after another dog, took my mother down. My mother, like her knee, she got a pretty bad cut in her knee. It kind of broke open. She ended up with a staph infection. It was like this whole thing. So I was like, holy shit. I looked up Stella's behaviors and it turns out that she was a reactive dog that would have gotten her killed if she went to a shelter. Like it was that bad. Then I found out that most injuries happen with dogs. The biggest injury involving dogs is dislocated shoulders. It's not bites. I was like, oh man, I got to get a handle on this. Unfortunately, what happened is Stella was so reactive that she got me panicky. Right. So when we got the trainer said that he's like, dude, you're not an alpha in this situation at all. Like your nonverbal communication is so all over the map that this dog's never going to listen to you. And the training with Stella was amazing because I was like, shit, this is exactly what I tell all my people. This is exactly my work. And somehow I miss this. And so one of the things about dogs is if you are not the alpha, they will just assume they have to be the alpha. And this leads them to be reactive, but it also leads them in an uncomfortable position because they're not really the alpha. They're kind of a surrogate alpha. And now they're nervous about you. And so they're kind of all over the map when we make them the alpha. And it's just leading all the shit I talk about on this podcast, right? Like it's being a firm leader. It's that authoritative. It's not being mean, but you have to be in control and you have to have confidence that your dog can be well trained, well behaved. And I think that is so, like, I remember when that happened, I probably did content about it because I was like, holy shit, like that makes so much sense, right? So when we talk about when kids are like tiny dictators, right? Or when we talk about when we are too soft, whether it's permissive or indecisive can do the same thing, or just too loosey-goosey, the kid assumes they have to take charge. And again, this isn't a conscious thing. They're not like, okay, my mom's not showing up the way I want her to, so I'm going to be in charge. It's just a natural place. And what I say in Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler is power is like a wand. And the wand is never sitting on the table. Somebody's always got it. And so if you don't have it, they have it. And when I say power, I always mean like the leadership, the authoritative, not power hungry, not power out of control. But our little ones, if given the power, are out of control because they don't know what to do with it. And it's not the way it should be. And I think there are I could be wrong about this, but I think there are natural things, natural orders of the universe, whether it's, I don't know if it's a spiritual thing, a nature thing, but like I always say, I think one of the hard things about losing a child is I think in a very nature-based cellular way, we're never supposed to lose the younger person first. Like the older person's supposed to go. And so I think in addition to all the actual heartache and the thoughts and the human experience we're having, I think there's a larger experience that makes that so crushing. It's out of the natural order, right? Whatever that means to you. And I think the same thing goes with like leadership and power and that kind of thing in a household. If the older, wiser person isn't naturally in a leadership position, something's wrong with the natural order and it just screws everything up. And so anyway, I learned that with the dog trainer with Stella. And so I did get better at it, but it's really hard once you have the experience of like your dog being reactive. It's really hard to set down your anxiety, right? Like I could scan like a mile ahead. I was so good. Like my eyes were constantly in motion, like looking for any movement ahead of us. And of course we lived in Providence at the time, which was, we were right by Providence College, which is kind of densely packed urban area. And there was a lot to scan. So I got better at it, not great, but Stella got old and died. Then we got Maverick, had a puppy, and I was like, okay, right away, I'm getting a dog trainer because I know my tendency. I think my tendency never really went away, but we got a dog trainer and, very simple things, the commands. And one of the huge things he told me, if you have to use the command more than once, you have lost the command. And that to me is the direct parallel to parenting. So a lot of people are like, I need my kid to listen to me the first time. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't enforce that. You don't say it in a leader way. You don't use a firm enough tone. You don't mean what you say. So now your kid has learned that you don't mean it. So that's why I don't like the 1, 2, 3. I like on 1, your child should be able to do it. If they can do it on 3, they can do it on 1. If you're saying something multiple times, you've lost the command. It just becomes background noise. And that is so true with our kids. Now, let me preface this because if you're new to me, you may not know this concept. This is in Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler, and I often say this on the podcast, is that your average 3-year-old and your average dog have similar brain development. Obviously, there's nuance, and obviously your child's brain is going to exceed a dog's brain in various ways, multiple ways. But I think it's a really good basis when we're talking about directives and how we talk to our children. Do I talk to Maverick all day long? Yes, I do. Do I expect him to fully understand what I'm saying? No, I don't. I know he understands my tone. I know he understands some things. And he's pretty smart about some things and he's pretty dumb about other things. But the more consistent language, like one of the things I always say to him is, do you want love? He knows what do you want love means. Does he understand the complexity of love? Probably not. But he knows it means that he's going to get snuggles and pets and that kind of thing. But it's really helpful with directives because we tend to use so many words. Oh my God, right? Like we explain too much, especially in the hot spots of the day, getting ready to leave the house in the morning. And I've said this before, like your kid doesn't give a rat's ass if you're going to be late for work. Like those are meaningless words, right? But we tend to like over explain everything when it should just be get your shoes on. That is the command, right? So what ends up happening is we use all these words. You wouldn't use those words if you were training your dog, right? And so I think this gets mucked up because people like don't like the idea that you might be training a child, but you are training a child. You are training them to hear your directives, right? Like we do, these words are very similar, even though one seems like a little harsher. And so we're providing the guidelines for their lives and we are training them in all kinds of areas. So when it comes to that, we want to shave our language, right? Like the same way, like if I said, oh, I don't want to say his name because he's resting right now and I don't want him to get up and start barking. But, if the dog I own, if I want him to sit, I can't say like, oh, I sure wish you would, sit when I tell you that. No, I have to use the clear, definitive sit. That is the command. And so I think that's a really good guide when we're dealing with toddlers. But I want to bring up a couple of other things. So the dog trainer with Maverick told like he gave us really good training, and there were certain commands for sure that we were supposed to use. And the command for come or whatever is here. And the command for like off leash is free. He's not on leash very often, so that command kind of got lost. But the here is very basic. And Pascal is the one who noticed. He was like, Mom, you just don't use the right word. Like he learned the command. He's so good with me. He listens to me. He's on voice command with me, and he's not with you because you will use every other word besides here. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, listen to yourself. So I'll be like, come here, where are you? I don't see you. Like I use every other word except the command, which I've said before. I think I have low-key PDA, pathological demand avoidance. Like I'll just do everything except the thing I'm supposed to do. So that's just in life. I'm such a pain in the ass. But I was like, oh yeah, okay. So I'm trying to get better at it because like he's not under command. He doesn't have to be like we live in the woods, so like I'm not in urban areas. I would never go to an urban area where other dogs would be. Like I get out on the trails before there's other dogs, but he's still not under my voice command. So meanwhile, let's pause there. I start hiking with a girl I knew from my aerial days, and we're doing a lot of the hiking together, and she's bringing her dog with her. And this woman grew up in 4-H. She grew up rurally. She's been around animals her whole life. And when I tell you her dog is under fucking amazing control. Like she just does a slight whistle, that dog comes running. He is by her side when she wants him by her side. It's so impressive. And he doesn't do like tricks or anything. He's just like, oh, well trained dog. And I was like, shit, I am the weak link. I am the problem with Maverick. I was like, it made me really embarrassed. And she was like, oh, you should bring your dog. He'd love this. And I was like, so embarrassed. I was like, no, I can't bring my dog. Like you don't understand how bad my dog is. And it's my fault. So I was like, all right, Jamie, get your shit together here. So I was like, I'm really doing the commands, right? And one of the commands is like, sit, like I have to put his collars on in the morning, and he has a light up collar because we're out in the dark, and he has a e-collar for like a little vibrational ding when I need it, and an emergency vibrational ding when I need it. So I've just started with small things. And so in the morning, I would always kind of chase him down to put on his collars. And I would like, if he went and sat outside on the porch, I'd go outside and put the collars on the porch. And I was like, wait a minute, why am I following the dog around? So I've made him come and sit and put the collar on. And guys, it took like 2 days of consistency. And now all I do is stand there in the morning and he comes and sits at my feet. Like I don't even need the command. And occasionally I do, occasionally he'll try to step out and I'm like, excuse you, here. And hey, or no, come sit. And so he'll do that. And I'm like shocked. Don't laugh at me because this is all I freaking tell you guys. I'm shocked that consistency works. I'm shocked that using the right shortened language that the dog learned and being consistent with it has created really good results. So y'all can laugh at me. And if you were in person, I would take a slap upside the head. So I can't with like how hard I have to learn lessons. And it's working across the board. I am now using the command here. I am now using the command sit. I am here. I'm doing all his commands with consistency. And he's like, okay, that's all I was waiting for. The other thing is he is that like even just this morning, we happened to run into a dog and his behavior has chilled out. He's gotten older too, so his behavior has chilled out around dogs. And if he's off leash, he tends to do better, which is we run into dogs off leash. My town doesn't even have a leash law because we're so rural and the dogs just kind of all over the place. And he's gotten even better. And you can tell he's become a love bug. Like I just out of the blue, like super babyish. Like he just puts his head all over me on my lap and he just wants to hug me. And I just feel like he's calmed down because I assumed the leadership position and he doesn't have to. And so the parallels, I don't think I need to point them out, right? With our kids is like when we are a really firm, I'll use Dr. Becky's word, sturdy leader that is not swayed in the wind, that we don't change our language, we don't change the commands or the directives depending on the weather of the day, and we show up with that consistency, it gives such a framework for kids to be safe. And when they're safe, they can relax. When they can relax, so much of the shitty behavior goes by the wayside. So really take that lesson to heart. But I want to point out one other lesson that I've really learned about Maverick and me. So in the morning, I take him to, it's a state park right down the road. They have a lot of extensive trail system. And I like that because near my house right now, the trails near my property are on my property and I'm surrounded by hundreds of acres of state trust. They do pheasant hunting and the DEM stocks pheasants. And so people come out and they hunt relatively close to my property. We have all signs up and everything. So nothing's ever happened, but pheasant hunters scare the hell out of me. So we are hunters. In my town, like pretty much you have to wear blaze orange all the time. And so just to be sure. And when you're deer hunting, you want to, you have to be very, very, very quiet. You have to be very calculated. You have to have no scent. But pheasant hunting, pheasants are actually quite dumb. And pheasant hunting, you don't have to be quiet. Dogs can flush out the pheasants and are often used to get them out of the high grass so the hunters can shoot at them. And it's a very, you don't have to be as skilled. Yeah. And it's also a very, it seems to be a thing that like grandfathers do with their grandsons. It's like a family thing. You don't have to be loud. You do have to have like hunting gear on, but you don't have to really be quiet, camouflaged or anything like that. And so I've always been a little bit nervous about it because it seems to bring out a less experienced hunter. And I'm like, I have a bunch of firearms like being shot off right near my house. So anyway, we avoid the trails near my house because of that. So I go to this state park and so we have to get in the car and it's dark. And Maverick is very attuned to wildlife because, at any given time, when you're driving in my town, there will be, right now we have a donkey loose and there's 2 goats that are evading being caught. For about 8 weeks over the summer, we had a loose goat that would not be caught. And it was hilarious. Like the police couldn't get it. The animal control couldn't get the goat. Everybody knew, the owner knew it, but nobody could get this goat. And so like on Facebook, police departments started busting our police department's balls. It was just like this huge thing that blew up online. And we've had, when I first moved to my town, there's a Rotary that's so cute. There's a couple of antique stores, an ice cream shop. It's like, they do candlelight shopping. There's a pop-up artist warehouse. It's so cute. It's like small town anywhere and I love it. But I first moved here and I went on, I joined the Facebook town page and they were like, John, come get your emus. They're blocking traffic in the Rotary. And I was like, where the hell do I live that emus are loose and blocking traffic? So anyway, there's a lot of wildlife. At any given time, there'll be a turkey crossing. Deer will be in the road. And so when I'm driving, especially in the dark, Maverick is like highly attuned in the morning because he hasn't gotten his energy out yet and he's highly attuned. And it's not a very long drive. It's 10 minutes. And I love, I'll get in the car and my car automatically puts on a podcast and he will like bark the bark of a wild animal. And it's so loud and it's not like he's right in my ear, but it just feels like it's right in my ear. It's very jarring to the nervous system. It really winds me up. But one thing I realized is that what gets me even more wound up is when I'm listening to a podcast and that barking now interrupts. And it almost always is like the moment I really want to hear. And for a while, I was like putting the music up, now the podcast up, because I was like, Maverick, I just want to listen to this podcast. And then I realized it was the dual thing that was making me overstimulated. And so when I shut off the podcast and just drove in silence, his barking affected me 80% less. And I was like, oh, this is so wild. And so now there are some drives, like when I take him like farther and we get on the highway, he seems to just settle in and sleep, and it's not so wildlife. But when we're driving in my town, he's just like, he's so looking for something to bark at outside. And so I realized when I'm doing that driving, I cannot listen to my podcast. So it goes back to this thing that I have talked about, like, um, are you I did a reel on this, and now I'm wondering if I even did a whole podcast about this. But the key here is, are your kids overstimulating or are you overstimulated? And I think this is a really important point, because a lot of people are just, that's the biggest complaint I hear about parenting. I'm overstimulated. And I don't know that kids themselves have gotten more overstimulating. Like, kids by nature are overstimulating. But we've become more overstimulated. We have more stimulating things in our lives. And so multitasking, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to talk a little bit more about multitasking in the next little bite size, but like, if your kids are around, maybe that's not the time to listen to a podcast, or to try to listen to music while you're cooking, or to try to do an extensive recipe, right? So we do these things that take our attention. And then when our kids want our attention, which they're needy little bugs. They are. I love them to death, but in those early years, they are needy. And so, yes, part of our work is like helping them play independently, helping them not be so needy, especially as they grow, helping them do things for themselves, for sure. But you can't ever control them. They're like the dog. Like, I don't know when he's going to bark, and I don't want him to not bark. He keeps predators away from our chickens. He keeps our garden safe from predators. You know what I mean? He's a woods dog. I want him to bark at things other animals that come onto my land. So I don't want to train him not to bark, but I can't control when he barks then, right? He's going to bark at certain things when they present. And I feel like kids are the same. Like, we don't want to break their spirit. We don't want to break their spark, but we can't control when they have a fit. We can't control when they get into a fight with their sibling. We can't control any of these things. So what we can control, though, is us. And if we keep things at level, if we don't keep overstimulating ourselves, if we're not trying to look at Instagram while doing the dishes, while cooking dinner, then when the kid comes and they're the tipping point, right? They come in and they're like, and you're like, oh my God, right? We lose our shit with our kids. So it goes back to that, like, idle mind. Like, keep your field, like, I don't know, that's what I've been thinking about. It's like my force field free of debris. And that includes auditory debris, because it's not really fair. Yeah, I know it sucks. So you can't listen to a podcast while you're doing the dishes. I understand. It sucks, right? But this is one of those things, like, what shit sandwich do you want to eat? Do you want to be yelling at your kids because you are overstimulated because of all the things you're doing? So I think we need to really what we're doing with our stimulation, right? And definitely auditory stimulation is one. And if the auditory stimulation is, like, if the dog barking and the auditory stimulation is the thing that throws me over the edge, I gotta make room for the dog barking, because that's the being. That's the live thing in front of me. The podcast can wait. So anyway, I just wanted to share that story too. So I hope these lessons from Maverick are helpful. Again, as we kind of close out the year, I just keep thinking, I don't know why this year is affecting me. I just love it. This December just feels impactful for me somehow. And so it might not for you. So maybe you're like, stop with your bullshit, Jamie. So, but I just feel like, again, like, it's such a clean, fresh slate. I talk a lot about loving New Year's, the turn of the new year. And I feel like going into it with like some broad strokes rather than specifics is always so helpful. So hopefully this was that. All right, you guys, as always, I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. Do me a solid and leave a 5-star review. That helps more people find me. And as always, put down your phone and rock on.